Manifold Garden is a beautiful game. It looks very simple, visually and mechanics-wise. You move blocks onto pressure plates in the spirit of Portal, traversing room after room while changing gravity to solve puzzles. But right as you exit the first building, you notice pillars stretching from the bottom to the top of the sky. There's a switch at the end of a gap you can't cross. Pondering to yourself, and out of good options, you see only one choice left. You fall. Falling in video games has been akin to death since Super Mario Bros., and since then has been a brutal and immediate way to off yourself, with your character dying long before you hit the floor. As games evolved, mechanics like fall damage punish players for even falling onto a lower part of the actual map. Oftentimes, these deaths by falling are intense. In games like Mirror's Edge, you hear the wind rushing past your ears as you careen rapidly towards your death. In contrast, in Borderlands 2, falling seems like an almost leisurely stroll, floating down and not taking the slightest hit of damage. In Manifold Garden, falling is an incredibly intense experience. The sound of wind completely overpowers you while your brain tells you that you should have died about 10 seconds ago, but the moment you hit the ground, you're perfectly okay. You can't really die in Manifold Garden, nor can you escape this world around you. You can fall for eternity and still be about 5 seconds from the nearest piece of land, which I have to say is perfect for cinematic shots. What it's also perfect for is scale. The world of Manifold Garden is infinite, but not in the same way that Minecraft is infinite. As you walk further throughout the world of Minecraft, you see new biomes, new caves, oceans, mobs, overly sized cactus, the exact coordinates of the background to the Minecraft stage of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. In Manifold Garden, what you see is your small stretch of land mirrored endlessly in a cold, empty void. The masterful work of sound designer Martin Cavalli and composer Larissa Okada are essential in communicating just how vast this world is to the player. I reached out to Okada about her work and she was very happy to answer. Was it a challenge to bring an almost infinite vastness to your music to accompany the world of Manifold Garden? Yes and no. For me, the most challenging part was creating an infinite vastness that felt impartial. I wanted to create something that was as equal parts beautiful as much as it could be daunting. Finding that balance definitely took some experimenting, but I'm pretty happy with where it landed. While playing Manifold Garden, I felt incredibly small. The music was not afraid to completely overpower me, turning from gentle and majestic to overwhelming on a dime. One of the standout moments of the game was when I completed all of the puzzles in the first chapter. Suddenly, an explosion rang out that called me to the center of the diamond. I found a dark cube warping the space around it. After hesitating for a moment, I picked it up. The world around me completely inverted. Everything light was dark and thunder roared from nowhere at all. The music grew, lightning cracked, rain crashed down around me. The peaceful world I knew a moment ago was now a chaotic abyss. For a short moment, the only thing I knew was panic as I desperately looked for a way to make it stop. I sprinted back through the level I just beat, finding nothing but more and more darkness. Eventually gathering myself, I searched around me. A pinging cube-shaped beacon called out to me on an island disconnected from ours. I leaped down into the endless void just to get the chaos to end. Once I found the right spot, I scrambled to get rid of the cube, and suddenly, the infinite world around me collapsed in on itself with a grumbling, terrifying roar. And after all of that madness, the game comes to an almost complete silence as you watch the cold and lifeless chunks of concrete dance around a gentle orbit. Those short reprieves after each world are the only breaks you get in the entire game. Every single room is seamlessly interconnected by walls, doors, and hallways, adding to the cold and clinical architecture of the world around you. The music, too, was even designed in a way to flawlessly transition between tracks from room to room at any given moment. After implementing some ideas in the beginning, Will suggested the idea of musical sentences for tracks to fade in and out seamlessly. We designed this system where, in the audio middleware Fmod, I would set a parameter from 1 to 100. 100 meant to play at full volume and 1 meant off, and I worked closely with the programmer Aaron to make sure these use cases felt as seamless as possible. All this work was done to make the game one unified experience. Even in the most realistic of shooters or open world games like GTA, you have menus and loading screens to sift and sit through. Unless you hit escape in Manifold Garden, absolutely nothing separates your brain from you in the game. Immersion is essential, and Manifold Garden knows it. Searching through the soundtrack of the game, you'll notice one of the songs is titled House of Leaves. Manifold Garden is another experience in a long line of reality-bending works, and one chief amongst them is Mark C. Danielowski's House of Leaves, a book about a house that's bigger on the inside than the outside. And above even the reality-bending house and the man that progresses further and further into its seemingly endless depths, the very book itself breaks reality, with the pages themselves actively fighting against the reader. Some pages remain entirely blank, and others stack so many letters that it's completely incomprehensible. The book doesn't need you to understand it, and yet we still get sucked into the house. Before Manifold Garden, I was unfamiliar with Mark C. Danielowski's House of Leaves. The book was one of the inspirations for the game, and lead designer William Chyr tipped me off to it, so I got a hold of a copy and started digging in. I loved it, and reading that definitely influenced some of my foundational composing choices for the game. The world of Manifold Garden seems to be infinite in another sense too. The architecture of this place is very purposefully built. Water flows through channels, rooms are all built with purpose, puzzles are set in place for the player to solve, but there's no way anyone could have built it, right? It's clear that this world has a purpose, but who would go through the trouble? Who could go through the trouble? Who would care this much to create such a thing for us finite creatures in this infinite plane? Looking through the OST once more, we see many references to ancestry, gods, colossi, but also to concepts that apply to video games and 3D design, like brain arching and refraction, and even further, concepts that apply to art as a whole, like mise en abyme and formal properties. This game seems to juggle so many concepts that it's impossible to find the answer, but there's really only one thing that links everything together: the idea of creation. The game was initially supposed to be just an adaptation of the MC Escher print Relativity, which is where the original name came from, but it has since grown to be so much more. While gravity switching is still an integral part of the game, it now explores more of architecture and impossible geometry, which Relativity just doesn't encompass. Everything about the game, from the art style to the mechanic, have gone through so many changes, and I felt the name deserved the same level of consideration. Of all the people to take this mind-bending challenge on, William Chyr is perhaps the best among us. William, before ever touching video games, was a magician and unicyclist for Lavorian Vox Circus. Even before that, he created balloon sculptures and short films and abstract art pieces. His mind was firmly placed in artistic creation his entire life. But in all of his works, color and vibrance jumps out at the viewer, while Manifold Garden's buildings are concrete and brutalistic. That, however, is where the garden in Manifold Garden kicks in. After the world collapses around you, you're left with something called a God Cube. Its gnarly effects are similar to that of a black hole, implying that a copy of the whole world you were just in is somehow contained within that cube. Once you bring it to the courtyard, it suddenly blooms into this massive tree and opens up a new area for you to find. These God Cubes are seeds to a whole new set of universes to explore, and you're the one bringing life to them. There are 6 areas in the game to complete, one for each side of the cube that makes up the garden. The puzzles in the game are never too difficult, but each area presents new mechanics to keep things interesting. Water that freezes when you're not in the same gravity, trees you can grow to make more blocks, even massive tetraminos connect power from one structure to another. And with each area completed, the garden grows more and more. As you traverse the areas, you start to notice unexplained little oddities. A door in the distance you can't reach, massive unused areas, gears 50 times your size, but still you march on. By the time you complete the 6th side of the garden, it becomes a familiar and friendly sight. However, once all 6 sides are formed, you reach the final area of the game, the Rainbow Path. This is the only part of the game where the puzzles start to get a bit challenging. Unlike most puzzle games, things don't always click together. Sometimes it doesn't feel like there's an intended answer, forcing you to improvise and come up with something that just barely works. You face a combination of every single area's mechanics, reliving each universe formed together to make this one. The black gunk litters every hallway, completely covering the ground at some points, and yet you continue to march forward. After completing a puzzle for every single plane of gravity, you reach the final puzzle chamber in the game. While other chambers included rooms filled with puzzles, new mechanics, and daring escapes, this final chamber is very simple. All you do is grow trees, directing water down a spiraling path until you can reach the final water wheel. It almost feels as if you've completed your goal already, like this is some simple formality, growing out the garden enough to finish your task. After the world folds in on itself one final time, you're left with the Rainbow God Cube, the culmination of everything you've worked towards. Instead of the regular hallway you pass through back into the garden, you're taken down a long stretch, passing through several dimensional gates. Instead of finding a garden at the end, you find an almost empty void with only a single platform and a slot for a cube waiting for you. As you plant the seed into the ground, not a courtyard, but a city builds around you. Buildings stretch from the bottom to the top of the sky, and you see only one way to move forward. You leap down to a protruding platform and open the door in front of you. Suddenly, the world you pass into isn't infinite. A wall greets your back and 5 gates meet your front. You can no longer change gravity, and all you have to do is walk forward. By the time you reach the edge of the universe, the wall behind you is gone, and so is everything else. You can still walk back if you want, but why would you? Despite being an infinite plane, you've already discovered everything. The only thing you haven't seen is what's at the bottom of this final void. Your foot leaves the ground. You're finally free from infinity. I felt a unique kind of fear while I was falling. This was completely unprecedented in the game, a moment where you could stare at absolutely nothing. No matter where you looked, there was always something in sight, but as I fell, I was completely at the mercy of the void. As the world around me darkened and the music overpowered me, I was ready for what came next. But I won't spoil this part for you. I want you to play this game. I want you to be immersed and to experience this as vividly as I did. But for those in it for the puzzles, this isn't quite the end. See, there's a secret in this game. Or rather, hundreds, right beyond your line of sight, in the rooms you pass right by without a second thought. And I'd have never even thought about that possibility until I saw the achievement, "The game is not enough. Complete the game without placing a single God cube." Now, how is this possible? How can you get to each section of the game without planting the seeds that allow you to get there? Well, easy. Shortcuts. So many shortcuts. This is when the puzzle game truly begins. Every single path needs cubes to open, and to fill these, you need to scavenge every single corner of the map. You're no longer playing the games the architects of this world designed for you. Hell, you're giving them the middle finger. These seamless halls have secrets within, and the journey to try and beat the game godless was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had. But if I'm being really honest with myself here, this isn't actually godless. These shortcuts were made by someone. The achievement exists and is made specifically to be found. We could wonder about these quote-unquote ancients and why we're here, but we know why we're here. And we know who the god of this world is. The creator is William Chyr, and we're here to solve puzzles. We're here to solve puzzles in the world that he, Larissa, and everyone else constructed for us. This game is a work of art, and its creators are humans, just the same as we are. Just as MC Escher is the creator of the winding staircases of relativity, so too is William the architect of these. So let's cherish it for what it is. Manifold Garden is many things, terrifying, artful, cold, brutal, but at the heart, Manifold Garden is simply a beautiful game. For the final question of my interview, I asked Larissa what she wanted to say to everyone. There's a lot to be anxious and worried about in the world right now. I hope that by listening to the soundtrack, you can take some time to slow down and dream. I'd like to thank Larissa for being so kind and thoughtful with her questions and with an amazing job on the OST. And now it's time for everyone's favorite part of the video, the scuffed outro.
Hi!
Hey!
Bitch! I'm here with a friend this time, another person you will never see for the rest of your life.
I think I'm human.
No. What's your name?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of electricity.
That's a weird name. Jesus Christ, calm down. Okay, what's your name?
MCB.
Oh yeah! Should I point them to your channel that has no videos on it?
Oh yeah, I don't even use that as my main account.
Should I point you to the channel that has, you, in that, neon room? I don't even know what it's called, so you could... Okay, I won't. Okay, so this video is about Manifold Garden. I'm not even sure he's seen it before.
I've seen, a clip of it.
Yeah, I kidnapped him.
A couple screenshots, and that's about it.
Yeah, so, I just literally held this hat. I drove to his house and said, "Do you want to record an outro?"
Yeah, he was just outside.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very often outside of his house, just staring into the window. But this time I made him aware of it.
I was in the middle of watching Cars.
Yeah, it was really strange. He said, "Okay, sure," and then just 30 seconds later, it was like, "Yeah, come outside. I'm right here." And he didn't even question it.
Yeah, I was in the middle of watching Cars with some people.
Oh.
Discord.
I haven't even mentioned anything about the video at this point.
You said it was Manifold Gardens.
Yeah, it's Manifold Garden. It's a pretty cool game. That's basically what my video says. You could have just watched this outro and you got the same message.
Be sure to like and subscribe.
Oh boy. Look,
smash that bell button.
He said it, so I'm not the scumbag for saying it. I'm just saying.
And if you look, only about 18% of my viewers are subscribed.
Only about 1,900% of my viewers subscribe to my channel. If you don't subscribe, you're missing out of the entire world population. You're gonna get mocked. Hey, say something funny.
Something funny.
God. This guy, he knows how to tank everything perfectly. Anyways.
Almost everything.
What can't you tank?
I can't play World of Tanks. I'm really awful at that.
I mean, you did tank that. So, okay, so, I'm gonna show your face now. Okay, I'm gonna Photoshop whatever you want over top of your face. What do you want on top of your face? So long as it doesn't get my channel banned. I'm gonna keep this entire thing in the video. All the pressure is on you right now.
So there's this Among Us video for there's a trap remix of the Among Us theme or whatever.
Yeah.
But then they added a bunch of fart sound effects. But there's this picture of an Among Us character bending over with a bunch of fart clouds in front of it. And
is it the one shaking its ass?
Yeah.
And then they Photoshop farts in front of it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, that is better than anything I could have come up with. Okay, so now Asher, it's your job to give the outro. The outro of the outro. This is the outro, but you need to give the outro.
Hey, goodbye.
What can I tell you? He's got a tank and everything.